Welcome to Land Language, the podcast transforming landscapes from toxic to regenerative. We're your host, Brit from Blueprint Earth,
and co-host Bethany from Bethany Rydmark Landscapes.
We explore beautiful, functional design through conversations with scientists, vendors, contractors, and designers who are changing the industry.
Whether you're in the field or at the drafting table, join us as we explore regenerative practices that care for people, place, and planet.
Let's dig in. So this morning on Land Language, we get the honor of having Miss Willi Galloway with us.
Yay.
Hello.
It's such a treat. I have fangirled you for a long time, mostly because I really enjoy how you bring food into the kitchen and inspire people to bring food in for themselves. And your cookbooks are just delicious. And I have your first cookbook personally, and Bethany does too. And now we both get your second cookbook, Veggies for Breakfast, which is launching on October 28th. So Willie comes with a background of Organic Gardening magazine and went on to write these two books. And in our conversations today, we're really excited to hear from you about how you got here, about some tips and tricks that people can take home to their own organic gardening practice so that they can aspire to make as beautiful as food as you do. And journey a little bit into your creative endeavors of, getting to this place of being a 2-time author.
Oh, yeah.
I know, and I'm always the nerd that wants to go back to what was 8-year-old Willie like, and how did she end up here now?
Well, I think 8-year-old Willie was really curious. That's sort of, I think, the through line of my whole life is I get really curious about things. And my mom was a big gardener. So when I was a kid, she had a huge vegetable garden. I grew up in Cheyenne, Wyoming, which is not an easy place to garden.
Yeah, right.
So it's like 6,100 feet. They get 15.9 inches of rainfall. It can snow all the way through June and start again in September. It's not a easy place to garden. And my mom was really motivated in that sort of 1970s, early 80s, back to the land way to grow food, make her own bread.
Mm-hmm.
So I was out there a lot with my mom. And some of my earliest memories are eating strawberries in our backyard, right off the stoop. Or I remember one time my mom was out digging in the garden and I was probably only 2 or 3 and I asked her what worms see. And she told me, close your eyes.
That's the cutest thing.
And I'm always remember that.
Dirt.
Yeah. So I grew up around food, and but I also always loved writing. I wrote a lot of nature stories when I was little. I had a whole little series about this hedgehog couple.
Oh my gosh.
So cute. And I majored in English, in literature, and when I was graduating from college, I really wanted to work in publishing. And my mom said, well, you should look up organic gardening. You love to garden. Maybe they have interns. And so I did.
Wow.
And they had an intern program and I applied for it. And I was probably the only person who applied for the organic gardening magazine, magazine intern, because they had a lot of more, sexy internships like women's health and men's health.
Sure.
And I got it.
Amazing.
Yeah. So after my senior year of college, I moved to Pennsylvania and I worked at Organic Gardening Magazine. And they were like, sweet, young blood, you can manage our test garden.
No way.
Which was on, so organic gardening was started by this guy named J.I. Rodale. He made a bunch of money in electronics, I think, but was super interested in health. And so he and his wife, Ardith, moved from New York City to Pennsylvania and bought a farm. And he started Organic Gardening Magazine and Prevention were the first two. And they went on to have lots of other titles, but he was super interested in organic gardening. And he championed Ruth Stout and a lot of Steiner and all, he was friends with all those folks. And so I was gardening on their farm. And I had access to their entire library when, it was sort of in the early days of the internet where you can just find everything online. So it was this amazing library of organic gardening books all the way back to the early 20th century. And that's where I got my start writing, was there.
That's incredible.
It was pretty cool.
Lucky you. What a way to just jump right in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there you were managing the test gardens and you were starting to write, I imagine, a bit too, and just like starting to kind of light that fire of bringing things to life through literature.
Yeah, and what I noticed is I really loved growing food. It was so satisfying to go to the test garden and pick some tomatoes and peppers and eggplant. There was stuff I hadn't really ever grown before
Mhm.
too. And so and trying all these different varieties that were being developed
Yeah.
um, at um, at Oregon State. We were growing some of the tomatoes that were, I think Oregon Spring was one of the tomatoes that came out at that time. And so it was fun because I got to talk to the plant breeders and try these new varieties that were coming out and learning about hybridization versus open pollinated. It was really an amazing experience. And it made me realize that there were lots of people. I was, 22 at the time, that were interested in growing food, and that there wasn't media that was directed towards them.
Mhm.
Like all the gardening magazines, of which there were many at that time,
Right.
RIP, like all
I
of them.
know. All the beautiful glossy pictures.
Yeah.
Gorgeous garden.
But no one was really speaking to someone who just wanted to grow some of their food. It still had a really back to the land mentality.
Mhm. So like for people who had large swaths of lands, but maybe not for somebody who just wanted like tomatoes and some herbs and kind of like play a little light.
Yeah, I think there was some nervousness in the garden community that young people didn't want to grow stuff anymore.
Mhm.
And what I realized from my own experience was like, hey, most young people are busy, they're starting their careers, they might live in an apartment. They're not interested in growing all their own food. They just want to grow food that they like and they want to grow it well. And there's not really any books out there speaking to that. A lot of the stuff was like yield based, like here's what grows the most.
Mhm.
And so I thought, I think there's room for a book that's really focused on helping people grow the best quality food and also learn about all the edible parts of the plant. So I had this moment, I've told Brit about it before, but I was in my own garden, in my backyard in Seattle, and I had some radishes that had gone to seed, and I was pulling them out, and just kind of on a whim, I was like, oh, I wonder what these seed pods taste like. And I ate one, and it was really good. And it was this total light bulb moment for me where I kind of like looked around my garden and I was like, wait, what else have I been composting that I can eat?
I love that. That when you told me that, because it's the season right now in
Yeah.
October, and I was like, oh my gosh, my garden's not done. There's so much more
Still
that's out
ready for
there.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like this year, my broccoli flowered. It was like almost ready, and then we went out of town and it was hot, and I came back and it was, and I was like, oh, it still actually tastes good.
Mm.
Like the flowers are beautiful, And so really, what I wanted with Grow Cook Eat was to just be like, hey, people, there's a lot out there that you can eat, and I want you to explore your garden and have the confidence to grow the food that you like to eat.
It's so fun, right? And you think about how so much of our produce these days is grown for mass production and it's grown for distribution. It's grown to go in the grocery store, be shelf stable for a hot minute while shoppers are in buying it. So like a head of broccoli looks correct when it looks like this, right?
Yes.
And before and after, you don't see it on display in the market that way typically. So then you maybe would be tempted to discount it. But to your point, it's still edible. It's still changing its form. But guess what? When you have the luxury of growing it yourself and it's out the door, you can use it when you have the opportunity to use it. And you can give us the confidence in your recipes to find creative ways.
Oh yeah, and there's broccoli is such a good example actually, because I think most people think, oh, like I actually myself thought I was a huge failure at growing broccoli because it's
I've
hard.
had that feeling.
Me too.
It's hard to get that big broccoli head
Yeah.
that we're all used to buying at the grocery store. But so what I did is I switched to broccoli as like Desiccio, which is really about the side shoot production. So it makes a small head and you cut it out, and then you get literally months of side shoot production, and it has these, so it's almost like broccolini. They get these long tender stems with like a little teeny head, and
You're blowing my mind right now because I've never done this.
Oh yeah. And so I always say, if you want to grow broccoli, look for, in the variety descriptions, look for one that says has good side shoot production, because you're going to have like way more success. And it's more like broccoli takes up a lot of space. It's not a small plant. It is a beautiful plant. But if it's getting all these side shoots, it's just a lot easier to feel like you're doing a good job.
Yeah, that's encouraging because I right now have broccoli growing in the garden and I'm like, I totally failed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little finicky. And it does better in the fall, actually,
Yeah.
usually. Yeah.
It's just starting to look good. I'm like, oh, maybe I didn't fail. Maybe
Yeah.
it's just gonna be all right. And so, like, one of my favorite things that, we've gotten to talk about while we've gotten to hang out is that there's this element of bringing vegetables and fruits into the garden. And you just touched on this, but I want to expand on it a little bit. Into the garden in a way where they start to blend in your perennial gardens, or you have them on a pot on your deck, or maybe you do get the luxury of having a dedicated veggie garden space, but it's tiny. And, as designers, a lot of times we think about, okay, people only want gardens if they're willing to like create a veggie garden.
Dedicated. This is our kitchen garden. It's part of our design. It's taking up a huge footprint.
Yeah, yeah. And like I feel like, permaculture folks are really adept to bringing in food bearing plants or edible plants into the landscape, like within the perennial garden. But the masses in landscape architecture and landscape construction maybe aren't as familiar with the opportunities that are there. Can you tell us some of your favorite plants and ways to bring in?
Oh, sure. Well, I think if you're looking at your garden holistically, really what you want to do is have a space that you can connect to. And if there's edible plants out there, it's such a great way. If you have a beautiful garden, you can go out and harvest some herbs and use them in the kitchen and then go back out to your patio and have dinner with friends. And it's this really full circle moment. But if there aren't any edible plants in the landscape, you're sort of cutting off like a little bit of that circle. And so I think herbs are an excellent way to start because herbs are called for in all sorts of recipes. They're so easy to grow. I mean, and they're delicious. And I also think it's a lot more sustainable. What I always tell people about herbs is like a little 4-inch pot of herbs and a clamshell of herbs costs the same amount.
Right.
And if you grow it, you can just use the amount that you need that's called for. And if you buy the clamshell, not only do you have this like plastic thing that you have to try and, I mean, I guess you have the pot too, but like, it's hard to always use the clamshell because,
Right.
it's like,
Maybe you don't need quite all of that for the recipe, but
Yeah,
that goes back
hardly
in the
any,
fridge,
like
and then
2
you've got
teas-
moldy
yeah.
herbs that, and a piece of plastic.
yeah. And so I'm like, just buy the herbs and plant them. And if you kill them, it's like no great loss.
Yeah.
Like it's, and so, yeah. So I think starting with herbs and there's so many beautiful herbs, is a great place to start integrating those into the landscape.
One of my favorite things as a beekeeper and bee lover is that herbs are bees' medicine cabinet, and so like right now in the garden in late fall, it's also what's continuing to flower, like the mint, and even the thyme is still flowering a little bit, and the lemon balm is still flowering a little bit, and it's like the place in the veggie garden where you're still seeing pollinators come in and get some nectar as they're preparing for winter too. So, as much as it is like our medicine cabinet, it's also theirs.
Yeah. Yeah. I always tell people to let their cilantro go to seed because A, it will self-sow, and B, the cilantro flowers pull in so many pollinators. You'll see a lot of solitary bees and insects like the little wasps, and they're really nectar-rich flowers, and they're great to plant by stuff like eggplant and squash that really need the insect pollinators to make their fruit. So yeah, I agree.
I love that. Yeah. And it's nice to just let things reseed also, to not say, okay, this is done, so I'm going to cut it back and, compost it. But because then you've got free seed for next year.
Yeah, yeah. And there's many things that I think that resow nicely, that play nice. Like, if you let Melissa go to seed, like lemon balm, yeah. But if you let arugula or dill or cilantro go to seed, it plays nice. It'll come back up and you have this nice surprise. I think another opportunity for integrating edibles into the landscape is using trellises, because the trellis can just look beautiful even if there's nothing on it. But if you put a squash up it, for instance, I had red curry squashes growing up my trellis this year until squash bugs, which just came to Oregon, killed it. And I was so mad. I went on a murderous spree, dumping them into soapy water. I was so mad, but I was too late. But they were looking really beautiful on my trellis.
Yeah.
But pole beans are also gorgeous, and peas, and and I think that's, you can, put some trellises out into the garden to have different sort of viewpoints, a place for your eye to stop and have an edible plant on it. That's an annual, yeah.
And portals into rooms. And I mean, and for children, that like element of being able to like grab things off of the wall or like that are hanging overhead. I mean, as a big kid, like I
Child at
love
heart over
that.
here.
Like, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like that, like being in a bean tunnel.
Yeah, like having something dangling over you just does feel kind of magical. And beans are so pretty.
The purple potted pole beans I've grown forever in my life, and I've like the heritage varieties where you can save the seeds. It feels like magic every year to grow them. They show up. They're so beautiful. Like my girls love them too.
Oh yeah.
I feel like that's one of those mysterious, beautiful living things. It's such a key part of my life. It's a little moment that year after year we celebrate.
I love those purple ones too because they have like a magic trick when they tell you they're done, they're ready, they're cooked.
Yeah.
Is they turn green.
They turn green.
Like the moment they turn green is when they're that perfect sort of just right cooked texture.
It's like a mood ring of the garden.
Yeah, exactly. So they're so fun because exactly. I love to grill them, but yeah.
I want to ask just like a few favorite varietals that you might have, or riff as long as you want. But I feel like that. Like I'm like, oh, now I want to grow these purple
potted pole beans.
Potted pole beans.
I like purple potted pole beans. I love bear garden sage. It's like makes this big beautiful mound of leaves. You can cut it back. It always looks really scraggly, in March, and I always just trim it back, and then it comes back up. It fleshes out again. So that is a plant that I have a lot of in my garden. I love fall gold raspberries and heritage raspberries. It's so nice to have fruit in the garden, and I think raspberries are they make sort of a nice hedge. At my house, we have a chain link fence between our neighbor's house and our house, and I planted raspberries all along it because it disguises the fence, and it's kind of a narrow strip of land, and they just fit in there and do their thing. So I always try to grow raspberries. I love forel and schluss lettuce. It's a flashy troutback is, I think, the same one, but it's a romaine that has red and green speckled leaves, and it is really good as a baby lettuce, and it holds well in the heat. And so that's one that I love. I love jaune flamme tomato. It's kind of like a giant sun gold. So it's not a big tomato. It's a salad-sized tomato. It fits in the palm of your hand. It's super productive and just like really tasty orange tomatoes. And I actually think orange tomatoes and striped tomatoes and sort of blackish red tomatoes are the best flavored tomatoes.
Nice.
Plus, they're like gorgeous colors for that contrast in the garden. When you think about even just designing in color and form and a non-classic red tomato.
Yeah.
This other eye-catching jewel.
Yeah. I think actually, and then, and I should talk about containers. So I think containers are a nice place to slot in edibles. And where the first time I ever was like, with a container garden is I was in California, and someone had bananas and cannas and this like very tropical vibe in a container garden and coleus. And then I looked, and they had all sorts of beautiful basils, like ruffle purple leafed basils and Genovese basil. And I was like, you don't just have to have like, this is my herb garden pot and has herbs in it. You can put herbs, and those like leafy herbs look really great with tropical kind of plants. And so now I always plant basil and canna together. And they look really pretty.
I could see that for sure.
Yeah.
And, as you're like bringing in plants into the perennial garden, I feel like a lot of us hear about companion planting and the importance of making sure that we're planting, friends next to friends and foes not next to each other. I feel like I get mixed opinions on that. Do you have any opinion on what to do? Like some people are like, just pack in your garden as tight as you can, put beneficial or trap plants around, or plant next, onions next to kind of almost everything, and you'll be fine. And some people are like, okay, follow companion planting to a T.
I am not a follow companion planting to a T kind of person because I have a pretty small garden. I also don't do a lot of crop rotation
Mhm.
because I have a tiny garden. And so I'm like, unless I have a really big pest or disease problem, I'm not going to rotate my crops. So next year, I'm actually so sad about it. I'm not going to grow any squash because I had
Yeah.
such a bad problem with squash bugs
Yeah.
that I'm just like, shh, I want to try and just give them nothing to eat next
Mhm.
year if they come out and
Deprive
like,
them so much
yeah,
that they'll go away.
go
Mhm.
find some other squash to eat. Because I love squash. So, but yeah, I think I think companion planting is definitely something you could follow if it interests you. I think more important than companion planting is thinking about growing plants that feed the whole environment. So letting stuff go to seed, like not taking down your whole garden in the winter.
Mhm.
So I've pulled out stuff that had disease and was like my tomatoes and stuff, but I still have some celery in there. I have my broccoli for hopefully for next spring. I was out of town a lot at the end of summer, so I didn't plant as much winter garden this year as I would have liked. But um, yeah, just giving places for insects to hide,
Mhm.
building a little bug snug for them, doing that type of thing, I think is more important than getting like really obsessed about like what should go next to each other.
Mhm.
I
Cool.
appreciate that a
Yeah,
lot.
me too.
I think sometimes those kinds of rigid rules can be so intimidating for somebody kind of intrigued and interested. I've watched friends over the years really like go all in and try to build out their spreadsheets and their this and their that, and it's almost so overwhelming that it
Hmm.
becomes this extra layer of burden where I wish for all of us, like, just experiment, grow things,
Yeah.
talk to each other, learn, see what the plants are, kind of read what's thriving and have fun with it. And don't be so like stressed and pressured that it takes the joy out of it.
Yes.
I feel like, and I say that to myself too, like my garden has all sorts of funky corners that don't thrive exactly the way I would have maybe pictured, but it still brings me so much joy because what is growing is so fun. And as you were saying, like, don't be so worried about all the cleanup. I'm like, good, because most of my garden is not cleaned up right now. There's still like floppy old herbs and things doing their whatever, and
Yeah.
it's looking a little sad as the weather gets colder and they start to give out. But you know what? It's tons of habitat. It's tons of,
Yeah.
it's a living thing doing its natural cycle.
Mhm.
And I think that's where we can give ourselves permission to not be so fussy.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Because the benefit of having something, even if it's not perfect, is so much better than my head keeps going as you're describing all these beautiful, like integrated botanical and edible plants. You know, the old like barberry maple, whatever, like track house garden that's bark dust and living but dead plants.
Yeah.
That don't
Yeah.
have any vitality to support wildlife or humanity in our appetites, like the contrast from that to something like this, where maybe again it's not perfect, but it is full of life and it's full of things that are in cycles, feeding
Yes.
from and off each other, supporting each other. We've got things that are, I loved your comments about the bees, like it's their medicine cabinet and it's also ours. And this is what I was going to kind of segue and ask you about too, like the benefit on the psychological level, just as humans interacting with these places. It's another kind of psychological medicine cabinet to be out and interacting with something that really is shifting and changing and drawing us in season by season versus that manicured, clipped kind of one and done garden. So
Yeah.
I want to hear more about your perspective and just getting people back in touch with their land at all scales. What does that do for us as our own species?
Right. Well, I just had an interesting conversation with a chef in Seattle. His name's Omid Rustai. He has the Caspian Chef is his like Instagram, and he has a new cookbook out called Bitter and Sweet. And we were talking, he talks about having culinary mindfulness, how, chopping vegetables and cooking something and preparing something with love is a mindfulness practice. And for me, I feel like adding in the layer of the garden and having sort of gardening mindfulness. My favorite thing to do in the summer is to get up early and get a cup of tea and just go outside and, like twist my tomato around the twine and pick a few things for breakfast and sit there and like watch the birds, like eat some sunflower seeds and just really be out there and connect. And I think there's so much value when you have an edible garden. There's a little bit more of an opportunity to get your hands in the soil just because they do need some cultivation and tending. Of course, um, perennial gardens do too. But I think just giving yourself those opportunities to slow down and to literally like ground yourself, like put your hands in the soil and to grow something, especially right now, or seems like there's a lot of things being torn down. I feel like just for me, on a personal level, planting a bean seed and watching it pop up and then grow into something that's 8 feet tall in the space of a few months is really life affirming. And so I think it's important for people to do that.
Yeah. That makes me think of one of my favorite artists, Molly Costello, does incredible paper cut arts and collages and things. But one of their pieces had the phrase, "Nature loves us back." And it has this kind of flourishing, gorgeous living plant material piece. But I'm thinking also about like you go out and you visit your garden in the morning and it loves you back. It gives you these little,
Oh, it does.
you know, we have our little backyard garden and we also have a small community garden plot down the way because it's fun to have a connection in the neighborhood. And I feel like when I traipse down there, and it's my best effort as a busy person, and it's not the most glorious thing ever, but like every time I show up and there's it's a little strawberry, it's a little cherry tomato, it's a little something, like this little gift back from the garden to say like, thanks for visiting.
Yeah.
Here's something.
Yeah.
And it feels so nourishing and rewarding to have that like reciprocal relationship with your plants.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Bethany, I mean, you see this in your practice, I'm certain, just as we see it in our practice, is that we really, as designers, have the opportunity to prescribe that.
Yes.
And it's kind of like being the wellness doctor of the landscaping industry. You know, we get the opportunity to, so many of my questions that I open up with clients, I'm just going to back up a little bit, are tell me about how you want to nurture yourself here. Tell me about how your kids want to play. Tell me about their favorite berries. Tell me about if you could just make a meal and what would the like ingredients that you think you could just like go out and grow would be? Or do you like to make tea?
Yes.
You know, and it's about that connection of humans to nature, as you two are both so well describing, that brings people into a space of solace within themselves and brings them to a space of observing the natural world. Because when you go from the barberry and the maple and the lawn garden to a floriferous garden and something that's producing food, be it minimal or not, you start to see nature interact with nature, species interact around. And I don't know how many times, if I could count, how many times I get the call I wake up every morning and I have my cup of coffee and I watch the birds land on the Salvia eleganosa and the branch bounces as the birds are eating the seeds off of it in late fall. Or my child goes out every morning looking for fresh strawberries in the patch and comes back with a bounty, you know, a whole bowl full, and is so thrilled. And that's what she has for breakfast because she's literally foraging for breakfast.
And she's going to remember that like I did from her. And what a nice memory to have.
Yes.
And I feel like that is, as you're saying as well, Willie, is like that richness of right now in these times of so much destruction. It's such a peaceful place to reconnect that gives us purpose and understanding that we matter and people matter and nature matters and that we can find peace every day in something we can create.
Yeah. I think they're so important. And I think having conversations about how to make food more integrated into your life, because food nourishes, and I think growing food nourishes you because you're actively cultivating. And so I think when you're having conversations with clients about where to put food in, that's so important because obviously there's beautiful gardens that are wholly ornamental, but if they can also have just this aspect of utility in a beautiful way, I think it just adds a layer of specialness to the garden.
And you told this story to me, I can't remember if it was yesterday or another day, but you told me this story about how you were sitting on your porch eating your toast with a scrambled egg, which used to be a typical breakfast, looking at your veggie garden going, I can add veggies to this in a simple way, which is what brought you the idea of writing Veggies for Breakfast.
Yeah, I was like sitting there and I was like, wait a minute, like why I'd been thinking about I need to eat more vegetables every day. Like it's hard to fit them all in. And then I kind of looked down at my own breakfast plate that had like all yellow things on it. And I was like, hey, wait a minute. I have this entire garden of veggies out there. And if I'm only eating them at lunch and dinner, it's going to be hard to get everything I need. I need to start eating them at breakfast. And I think the reason why people don't eat vegetables at breakfast, why they think they can't have a garden, is time, right? And mornings are a busy time, regardless of who's in your life and your family. Like, you know what I mean? Like, not a lot of people have the luxury of like getting up and chopping a bunch of vegetables and making a scramble and every morning. Like, that's not realistic. And so I started for myself strategizing on how I could eat more vegetables at breakfast. And it really came down to prep, you know. And what I like to do now on the weekend is I usually make like a baked frittata situation because those eggs keep for 5 or 6 days. I roast some vegetables and I pre-cut some raw vegetables. I call it my little salad bar box, and I put it in the fridge. And then during the week when I am like frenzied in the morning, it's an assembly situation instead of a cooking situation. And I feel like it's the best favor I can do for myself, and like such a simple way to take care of myself. And my son and my husband don't even necessarily eat the food. It's only for me
Nourishing
sometimes.
mama.
I do have a lot of recipes my kid will eat, but I do it mostly for me because I feel like assembling a really pretty bowl in the morning and just having a nice breakfast starts my day off on an intentional note that feels really good. And so that's the idea behind Veggies for Breakfast, is just try and help people be able to eat more plants. And give them an opportunity to have a moment in the morning that feels literally nourishing on a lot of levels.
Yeah, when you get to say "I love you" to yourself every morning,
Yeah.
with the like bowl of vitality.
Yeah,
I mean, that's pretty affirming day after day.
it is.
And the garden loves me too.
Yeah. And it's fun. And I always grow nasturtiums. I just really love them. They're so cheerful. For some reason this year I didn't have any aphids on my nasturtiums.
Ooh, lucky year.
Yeah, I traded, I don't
The
know. I
squash
might trade aphids for squash bugs if I had at my druthers. But but I like to go out and you know, I love nasturtium leaves. They look like lily pads on a plate.
Yeah.
So I'll even just like pick a nasturtium leaf and like I'm making avocado toast and like tuck my nasturtium in there just so that I can, for like 5 seconds before I eat, be like, oh, like, look at my face. And then, but yeah, so I love to grow nasturtiums for that reason.
That's like me and my borage flowers. I feel like borage flowers just make me instantly feel like I've just sprinkled magic all over what it is. The salad or the little garnish on the drink or the whatever. It's like magical, and you get to eat it.
And they're blue.
So pretty.
Yeah, so pretty. And I feel like, you know, one of our favorite moments as a family that has come to be this summer, because it's the first summer I've like acknowledged that I grow a tea garden. Like I've grown herbs forever, but it was just having young children for so long and be like, okay, everyone gets colds all the time because that's what's happening at that time of life. And realizing that like I have all the tools in my garden to have an antiviral tea for the kids. And they enjoy it so much that like going outside and grabbing
The ritual of making this tea.
Yes. Like even my 2-year-old is like, I mean, every day we make tea together and it's like, let's pull the mint leaves off. Let's throw in some thyme and some rosemary and some agastache and some anise and some mugwort. And that's our fall antiviral tea right now. And it has all of the things we need to make sure we don't end up in that situation. And then pop in some honey, you know, from friends' hives and eventually from our hives as the bees move on. And, you know, we don't harvest honey unless it's they're leaving the hive. But to have that practice of just like seeing that you can live with the land and it can provide for you medicine is such a deep thing for children to understand.
Yes. And what I'm always, kids are so receptive to food that they've had a hand in.
Yes.
And one of my favorite pictures is my son like pulled out some carrots, and I luckily I like had my phone and I just didn't have the picture because he just has this like total like joy and wonder, like, you know, he's like, looking at the carrots, and kids love anything you said, like they can pluck off or pull up, or have flowers, things that smell or soft or touch. It's such a sensory experience for kids. And I just feel like kids who grow up around gardens and plants are so lucky.
Yeah.
Because I think then it's sort of in their DNA that they have a place they know they can go if they're feeling dysregulated, or they just need a moment. They know that going outside makes them feel better. And like, what a gift to give our kids to have that knowledge. I think it's really important. And that's why I think gardens at schools are so important, so that all kids have this opportunity to maybe learn that.
And you were talking about Tulsi basil the other day as like one of your new favorite tea herbs that you're like, every year Tulsi basil's in the garden now.
I had never grown it before. I always, see it at the grocery store. Tulsi basil. I was like, what is this? And I bought some seeds at the Northwest Garden Flower Festival, and the woman I bought it from was like, "Oh, it's my favorite. It's like a really just stress-reducing tea." I started the plants kind of late, and then they really sat there in my garden for a long time and didn't do much. And I was like, "Are you guys gonna grow?" Like, they were little, and then in late summer they just went, and now I have these big blouse leaf plants with a lot of the purple flowers on them, and it has I didn't look up the botanic name. I don't know if it's related to the Italian basil. I'd have to look, but it has a very specific flavor that pairs super well with lemon verbena. And so I've been making that almost every afternoon. And I do feel like I don't know if it's just the ritual of like pausing and going to harvest them. And like, I love the sound of making tea. Just like I don't have a electric kettle. I have one. So I just like filling it up and like putting it on the stove and like having it whistle. And then like the sound of it pouring, like the whole, like I like it so much better than coffee. Like in the morning when I'm like making like grinding the beans and stuff, I'm like, this is like not the noise I want to hear in the morning. But tea is like very like feels very relaxing. So yeah, I like the whole thing about it.
That's such a sweet thing to think about.
I mean, I was going to ask about the Northwest Floral Garden Festival. Tell me about this organization. Event.
It's in Seattle, and it's a huge event, and so they have, they have like these show gardens, which are not. I think a lot of people go for the show gardens because they landscape designers. There's usually a theme, and they like have a space, and they come in and they force a bunch of plants, and the sustainability of it to me is questionable, and I'm always like, how many ideas are you actually going to take away from this garden that's like on a like convention room floor? But there are like cool plants, and I always do sort of enjoy that part. But what I'm there for is the lectures and the marketplace. They have just like dahlia growers with tons of amazing dahlias, and all these small seed companies from the Pacific Northwest are there. They have nurseries, and then they bring in people from all over the country and the world to lecture, and they have an excellent speaker series. And I'm not just saying that because I'm one of the speakers this year, but no, I actually saw a great lecture last year on tea gardening, where they went through all sorts of different plants for tea, and yeah, so I think it's fun. It's in February. It's right when you're like really
the doldrums of winter.
Yeah.
Out of this.
You're like ready for spring, but it's still dark and cold and rainy. So if you're in the Pacific Northwest, it's fun to go to. And then there's also it's full of people who like gardens, and as we know, those are great people. So it's fun. I love to go to it.
So your topic this coming winter, will you be sharing about the book? Will you be sharing about?
Yeah, well, I'm talking about actually my favorite varieties that are grown and available from Pacific Northwest seed companies.
Amazing.
So we're so lucky in the Northwest because we have a ton of seed growers, and they are doing really cool work where they're a lot of times breeding what I like to think of as the new heirlooms. So they're growing climate adapted open pollinated, open source varieties that are new and delicious, and they're increasing biodiversity, and a lot of them just have really good missions and are training other people to become seed farmers. And so I want people to know about these companies. I want them to know about the varieties that these people are excited about, and I want people to grow them in their own gardens. And if they're nervous about saving seed, that's okay. Like, buying seed from these companies helps them do their good work. So that's what I'm talking about.
That's so fun.
I can't wait to see that.
I want to take all my ladies from the office and hop in the car and drive up.
You should. We should take a little caravan from Portland.
That'd be great, actually.
Yeah, I know.
Party bus.
Yeah.
Party bus.
Yeah. There's also your Substack that I want to talk on a little bit, just like for my personal, tell me about what you're doing with your Substack too, just so I can follow along and be excited.
Oh, sure. So I worked at Organic Gardening magazine, and I loved that job. I mean, it was really I stumbled into my dream job as a college graduate, and then I've been trying to fumble my way back to it for the rest of my career. But what I loved is the opportunity to talk to other people about their gardens. And people who love to garden are typically really interesting people. They like good music and they read interesting books. And so I wanted to start a Substack that was really profiling other people's gardens and people who are interesting. And so it's been really fun. One of my favorite profiles that I did this year was I had a conversation with a woman who's an artist. She's a botanical illustrator on San Juan Island, and she has these beautiful carrot cards and washi tape with tomatoes on them. And I was like, you must be a gardener. You must grow vegetables. No one can grow a tomato like this. Yeah. And she was like, yeah, I have a community garden plot. And so we talked about her art practice and how she makes her art, and she also did a tour of her community garden. And I also did one. Minam River Lodge is this amazing.
Yes.
Yes. Have you been there?
There. My grandpa used to own the property a long time ago. I went once as a little kid.
Oh.
And then I've gone back since the new owners have renovated it, and it's just an exceptional place. And their kitchen garden and their chef's program and their food.
Yes.
I get nerdy.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. I'm going next summer for our 20th anniversary.
Oh, yeah. Well, the gardeners who've been there for the past 2 years, they're moving on, but I hope they find someone to they've really built the garden up in an amazing way. And so we went there this summer, and I just got back from Italy, and I toured a monastery garden there that's just been opened for the first time. It's publicly, it was a private garden for the monks. And so it's been so fun. And if anyone listening has a garden that they think I should know about, please let me know. I just really love sharing these stories and getting to peek into these gardens and see them myself. It's been fun. And I'd like to, as Substack's a really big platform with a lot of opportunities on it. And so I'm interested in, maybe doing some audio interviews / podcasts, or doing some recipes and or live there's question and answers. There's a lot of opportunities there. And so it's been a fun project. But basically I sort of missed gardening magazines, so I'm making my own little garden magazine.
I love it.
Yeah.
Are you wearing all the hats? Are you taking photos? Are you taking your notes and you're writing and you're assembling this?
Yeah. So right now I only do it every other week because it's
only sounds like a lot. Good job, lady.
Yeah.
Because it's a little too much to try and do every week. But I have a growing list of people I want to talk to. And there's this lady I found on Instagram who lives in Sweden who does these amazing floral, she's a florist, but she uses garden, flowers from her own garden and in really sweet ways, in plants that you don't normally see in arrangements like pansies and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm excited.
I kind of can't believe all of the hats. As a Renaissance woman, I can't believe all the hats you wear as well.
I'm kind of tired sometimes.
I don't know if you guys all know, also, she also owns Perch Furniture with her husband. We don't have to go down that road. It's just to say, a lady of so many accomplishments, truly.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yes.
The curiosity thing, I get interested in something, I just can't help wanting to explore it.
Yeah.
For better or worse sometimes, yeah.
truly. And it's impressive because I see what your purpose is in doing these cookbooks and doing your Substack and the organic magazine is that you really have a kindred purpose, as I think Bethany and I do, which is to connect humans back to nature and to connect them to that space where their vitality comes from that connection, whether it be food or spending time or engaging with the garden and really seeing that opportunity as a healing moment for society and for families and for children.
Yeah.
And I just really honor that and hope that that thread is so clear to all the listeners and that in that thread there are some take-home notes of great varietals to play with when planting your own garden or your clients' gardens and some great resources that I think are really wonderful gifts to give to clients too of now you have this like
Use your garden and nourish yourself.
yeah. I mean, it's inspiring. A lot of people don't know what to do with it once it's complete, you know, and I think these are really great toolkits of, okay.
Yeah. Oh,
Here it
thank you.
is.
I'm so flattered.
Yeah. And I just love that you've taken your passion and made it an intention to share what you know and what you do for yourself.
Oh, thank you. I really do love connecting with other people who love plants. It's just, I always walk away feeling like filled up. So it's been really fun to come on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. No, you just radiate so much joy and it's really fun. I feel like the same energy back. It is so encouraging to be around people that are rooted and grounded and having these reciprocal, grateful relationships with what's growing. And it makes us more alive and thoughtful, and hopefully in all of our interactions with each other in the world, we're bringing that energy and that joy to help each other feel sustained and feel nourished, and reminding ourselves we can have this gorgeous life together in community. It's possible.
We're all
connected. It starts in the garden. Like, close your eyes, go back to the worm. Like, start there in the soil, and we grow a beautiful life.
I love that.
This is so much fun, Willie. You're great.
Oh, thank you. No, this was really, I had a great time.